Well, hi, everybody. This is DearMamaSal. We are live on Friday lunchtime, which means we're going to be talking about coping with feelings. And the truth is, we all have feelings all of the time. And I want to just make sure everybody knows that it's perfectly normal to have feelings and also to acknowledge them, good or bad. They're quite honestly, feelings are feelings. And as I like to say to the viewers, if it's a feeling, you have control of it if you learn how to do that, right? If it's a feeling, it's something inside you. It's not an external thing. It is our reaction to whatever's happening on the external. So what we try to do on Friday lunchtimes is to talk about how to control those feelings or how to improve them or how to switch them over, whatever. We're always looking at different aspects of it. So a very happy Friday to 13th to you all, in case you hadn't noticed that it is Friday the 13th. Hi there to Jody. Jody is our admin. And by the way, just to let you know that Jeannie contacted me and said that she is at a medical appointment today. And so she'll have to miss the broadcast. So just so you know, Jody, you don't have a backup today. All right, so we're going to be talking about our inner child today. And the reason I wanted to do that is because it's an ongoing thing, all right, to make sure we know when we've been triggered, how to understand what's happening, and then how to turn it around as quickly as possible, which is really what the goal is to get back into the present, not into the past or the future. Get back into the present as quickly as possible, because that is where your serenity is. And that is important for you to know, that that's where your peace is. For those of you who are looking for happiness, it's in the present. It's not in the future or the past. It is in the present if you make it that. And it's up to us to take responsibility. Dear Mama Sal, by the way, it's not just me. It's a group of people who get together 3 times a week. Lunchtime, we talk about coping with feelings. Friday evenings, Pacific time, 7 o'clock, and we talk about coping with life. Normally, we talk about how to live life on a pretty tight budget, because I believe we're all going to be feeling that more and more as the uh, supply chain problems continue in the near future. And I would think we're probably going to be struggling for a next year at least, if we're lucky. And then on Sunday afternoon, we talk about coping with stress. And that's also part of our everyday life. So just want to give thoughts and prayers for Beth. I haven't had an update from her. Hi, Benji. Steak is getting expensive. Hi, Benj. Benji, I am well aware of that. It's getting very expensive here. Everything is getting very expensive here. I really do believe, I even said to Judy yesterday, Benji, you know, um, do you have plenty of formula? And then I realized she wouldn't need it. But everything is getting really expensive, and that's why for the last 2 years, I've been, um, getting people to be aware to stock up and make sure their pantry is pretty full. Because everything is going to get. I was just counting how much coffee I have, Benji, after you said to me, that's one thing that's going to be in very short supply. Um, if pandemic stuff happens normally, but I was looking to see just how much coffee have I got. I think I'm good if I ration it. What I got was extra strong brew, so that I can make 2 cups out of one, helping pod. I have a Keurig. So, I can make 2 cups out of one pod if I need to. I reckon it should last me at least a year. And I reckon that's how long the inflation will probably happen, and the recession that we think might well happen. Anyway, thoughts and prayers for Beth. She's had a lot of health challenges, and I'm waiting for an update from her to hear the results of all the tests she had done. A couple of birthdays. We believe it's Jonas's birthday tomorrow, as far as I know. I think it's Andy's birthday roundabout now as well. And a couple of days we've got Emma's birthday. So just so that we all are aware of that. Please remember to follow us on Facebook and Twitter. That's where we make changes. If I want to update you about somebody, one of the viewers, or if I need to change a broadcast for any reason, that's where I do it. Hi there, Kimmy. Kimmy, I wanted to thank you. I know you're probably surprised to hear this. Let me show you why I want to thank you. Hold on a sec. There you go, Kimmy. You said glue it, and I did. For those of you who don't know, my shark that's probably been with me for 15 years, the handle broke where it joins into the rollers. Where it joins in the bottom here. Oh, you can't see that, sorry. Where it joins in here. And, Kimmy was saying, glue it. And I took some Gorilla Glue, Kimmy, and I put it together, and it is working. However, that said, my new one should arrive today. So if you hear me say delivery, it means there's a knock on my door and I need to go collect it. So just so that you know that. By the way, under Be Prepared, remember, for those of you living in the Northern Hemisphere, summer is on its way, hopefully. We've had torrential rain here. I don't know anybody else, but we had really torrential rain last night, enough that I thought I would probably lose power, and touch wood. We luckily didn't. So just be aware, the temperatures have been way lower than normal, but it is what it is. So in terms of being prepared, I made a point yesterday to take my stand-up fan apart and really clean the blades of it and everything. It's sort of something I try to do at least twice a year. And I'm amazed how dirty they get. It's just amazing to me. And what I do is I just put it on its side down on a bath towel and just spritz it. And it's quite disgusting what comes out. Erit, shalom. How are things in Israel? Good to see you. And so just remember, if you haven't cleaned your fan in the last little while, if you've got a stand-up fan, you might want to just unplug it and then clean it. And as I said, you'll be surprised how much dust and dirt comes off there. I still haven't hooked up my little baby air conditioner thing. When I say baby, it's a stand-up portable one, so I'm looking forward to doing that. I wanted to just talk a little bit before we get into the main point about the baby formula situation, because I always like to make sure we all are in reality with what the major news issue is. The baby formula thing is double-sided. Number one, obviously, it's a supply chain problem, and it is, part of that caused a shortage. But remember, at the same time, I think it was the Abbott Laboratories that had to recall I think 1 or 2 batches, and that took a whole lot of stuff off the shelves. And let's hope that they get it fixed pretty quickly. I am certain it must be really concerning for those of you who have children or grandchildren. So just be aware. We're going to talk a little bit, as I said today, about inner child. And just before we get on to that, I just want to make sure you all understand that I am not a psychiatrist or psychologist or one of those things. What you're going to hear from me is just my view as somebody who's lived through a lot of inner child stuff and continues to. And it is just a case of be aware of what's going on. Kimmy is adding to this thing about the the shortage of baby formula. And she's saying on the news station, it said it was because of hoarding. Some people will obviously, and that's, I think, if you thought there was a shortage, you would probably, and you had a young baby that was on formula, I'm pretty certain you try and buy as many cans as you could or but I think most stores, Kimmy, are rationing it to 3 cans per person. So because to stop people hoarding it. So I could be wrong on that, but that's what I read today when I was sort of researching it a little bit more. So we're going to start off with have you ever felt stupid? A feeling of stupidity. Anybody? And by the way, when you feel like that, is it true that at some level your inner child is is triggered? It's just like you feel like you're about this big, right? It happened to me this week when I realized, to my horror, that I was having all these allergy problems. That you know that because you've been watching me really struggle through the broadcast. But what you haven't seen, thank goodness, is how badly my allergies are. Um, in terms of I have an allergic reaction to one of my medications, and they're waiting to try and switch it over, but there's stuff going on that they need to get permissions for it. So, so I don't know why it took me so long to get smart, but I suddenly realized, wait a minute, it's an allergic reaction. So therefore, maybe antihistamine will help. And it's just like, duh. And I felt so stupid because guess what? It really has helped. And not only, I mean, it takes it a while to kick in, but not only am I not streaming as much, but also I probably cough about once a day instead of choking 6 or 7 times a day, choking to the extent that I literally am about to upchuck. I'm choking so deeply. It is horrible. And so I'm hoping that they will get my new meds sorted out as soon as possible. All right, just updating. She's also saying that on her new station, they said not to make your own formula or to dilute the formula that you have, obviously because it'll be less beneficial to your baby. Yes, and Kimmy's saying, I think if they had to, they could feed babies whole milk. All right. And I would think that would be, I don't know enough, but probably, Kimmy, I would check into should it be whole milk or should it be fresh milk? You know what I mean? Uh, like almost straight from the cows. But then I'm worried about pasteurization and all that. So I don't know, but I would suggest talk to your doctor. All right. That's the easiest way. So can you see that when I realized I have an allergy, maybe antihistamines will help? Can you understand that at some level I felt a little stupid? But the interesting thing was when I talked to Jody about it, she reacted and she said, I presumed you were already taking antihistamines. What I love about Jody, she always thinks I'm way smarter than I am. But it's like, and then I watched Jody apologize for the fact she hadn't told me to take my antihistamines. And I'm going, isn't that interesting? That is not Jody's job, right? It's mine. But I know that as somebody who really cares about me, I can understand why she reacted that way. So there was part of me as well that I don't know why that thought that taking antihistamines for this wasn't a good idea. I grew up in an environment where you don't take pills more than you absolutely have to. And so there was this whole thing about, the doctor didn't say take antihistamine. So surely he would have told me that. Well, I want to tell you that choking was getting so bad that anything was going to help. So here's a question. And it's a bit yucky, but I want to talk about it because it's important. If any of you have ever had a nail fungus, maybe on your toes or something, do you know how long it takes for a big toe nail to regrow? Any guesses? How long does it take for a new toenail to grow? If you've accidentally, had a problem and needed to have that toenail removed, how long would it take for a new one to grow? And when I found that fact out, I realized, Benji's saying 6 months. They actually say it can take up to a year and a half, Benji. And the reason I want to mention it is because I had a problem with uh, one of my big toenails having a fungus infection. And I tried the stuff, and after a month it did nothing. So, in fact, I think after 2 weeks it did nothing. So I thought, well, that's a waste of money. I now realize it wasn't a waste of money. I just wasn't doing it long enough. And so, how about that one? If ever you hear of anybody who's got that problem, make sure they know to keep treating the nail, but to keep treating it for a long time, because that big toenail will take up to a year and a half to totally grow out. I thought that was pretty interesting. What about you? So the discussion that I want to have today is about our inner child. And, we always talk about how when we get what we call triggered, we end up on the hamster wheel, right? We seem to go round and round and round in a sort of panic. And the way to get off the hamster wheel and into reality, okay, is to let go of the emotion. All right, because reality is about facts. It's not about emotion. And so it's really important for all of us to understand that we all have situations that will put us into a bit of a spin. And as you know, I had a big one recently, and it really put me into a spin on a number of issues. And I thought what I would do is just talk a little bit more about how I managed to get myself back into the present. And that was in terms of being in reality. So I needed to deal with my inner child. And your inner child is part of your subconscious, just so that you know. And it has a way of picking up messages before you're actually able to process it. Have any of you noticed that? You sort of get a reaction before your intellect kicks in. And that is one of the ways to make sure that you know that you've been triggered. All right. And that's the way I find it. I go, okay, fine. I feel like I've been attacked. Well, guess why? I had. Or I feel something's going on. Well, guess why? Something is going on. And if you can learn to feel the feeling, then it'll help you act more quickly, to let go, to analyze it, let go of it, and then get on with the reality. And so if you know that your body will feel it before you realize it, all right? And get used to those feelings and go, wait a minute, I just got triggered. Have any of you noticed that? That something seems to shift in your body beforehand. And the reason is because what happens is your subconscious holds your emotions, memories, and beliefs, and I'm quoting obviously, from the past, as well as our hopes and dreams for the future. So, as I've always said, if you're living in the past, then you're more likely to be depressed. If you're living in the future, you're more likely to be anxious. So the trick is, if you want to stay balanced, is to stay in the present. Have a look at the others, sure, but don't stay there, all right? And so we had an interesting couple of things happen this week that I thought I would demonstrate that with. I spoke to Lauren and got permission to tell this story, but her mum suddenly got really sick and ended up in hospital. And she ended up in hospital with pneumonia. Now, the good news was that she was in hospital when they diagnosed it, and they were able to treat her immediately, with all the IVs and everything else that they needed to get her help very quickly. So the good news on that one is that she got treated. And our thoughts and prayers, by the way, for Lauren's mum, that she continues to get better, because I hear that she is improving. But the interesting thing was that when it happened, Lauren's automatic reaction was to say, why didn't I spot it earlier? And I said to her, I think you might be being a little bit tough on yourself, because did you really know how sick your mom was, or was she lying to you to try and, not be a burden in any way? How many of you know that story? How many of you have ever pretended to be a lot better than you are because you didn't want to worry somebody else? And I'd like to suggest that that lie can be dangerous. And when I say can be dangerous, can you understand that lie had um, Lauren's mom in hospital? And if they hadn't identified it right there and then, she might be a lot worse. Yes, Jody is saying she's guilty of it. All right, she's guilty of pretending to be healthier than she is. Now, I'm a great believer in doing the best you can, Jody, and I'm very proud of you. And I know that you've been doing wonderful things, even though you are really sick. And we are all holding you as a role model on that. And I look at Erin. I always think about Erin, who has use of one hand and her brain, basically, and everything else she needs help with. And yet she has this wonderful attitude. So there are different things going on here. Can Erin change her reality? No, she accepts her reality and does the best she can with that. And by the way, the interesting thing is that because the care home where she is um, messed up her wheelchair, the good news is when she is going for these ultrasounds and things that she's having at the moment, this is Erin, that she has to go on a gurney, which of course is way more comfortable for her. So think about that. So Jody, I would like to just discuss this with you and go, it's not that you shouldn't do the best you can with what you got. That is not what I'm saying. What I'm saying is, you know, be aware. This is, other people are not clairvoyant. So there are times when you need to go, yes, this is really painful. This is 9 out of 10 pain, but I am coping with it. All right. So you're not lying about the amount of pain, or you're not lying about, the nausea that you're feeling, for example, or whatever else it is. It is just like, it is okay to tell that truth to people so that they can be aware. And also, I think it's important that we do tell the truth. And I asked this question many, many times. If you found out that somebody had been lying to you about their health and then they passed without you ever knowing that they were that sick, how would you feel? And so I try very hard when people say to me, how are you? That the people who are really close to me, I'm not talking just the social, how are you? I'm talking about people that are really close to me. I try to say to them, hey, look, I had a bad week, but I'm feeling a lot better today. And then if they're interested, they'll ask what happened that you had a bad week, right? And if they're not interested, they won't ask that question. So I can just carry on. So when you think about it, Lauren's mom probably didn't want to worry Lauren that she was not feeling well. And that, in turn, led to her getting really, really sick. So bear that in mind, all right? And then, isn't it human nature that Lauren, in turn, would say, how could I have missed that? And the answer was she missed it because her mom wasn't telling the truth of how sick she really was. Jody is saying, perhaps I fear being judged as weak. But I agree 100%. There's a safety issue involved. Yes. And that would be adult thinking. All right. And even if you say, I'm telling you this for information purposes, all right, that right now this is what I'm struggling with, but I seem to be coping fairly well. If it changes, I'll let you know. I think for the people that are very close to us, they need to know that, don't you? And I always say, turn the mirror. All right. If it were happening the other way around, would you want to know? Now, I know a lot of you want to protect people close to you because you don't want them to worry. Well, how can they deal with the reality if you don't tell them the truth? How, it's like treating them like a child. And then the difficulty will be maybe they expect more from you than is realistic because they don't really know how sick you are. Right. Good point, Kimmy. Kimmy's saying, I don't like to say how I am because I was taught that it is complaining. Let's talk about that. How many of you grew up with that tape in your head? The same Kimmy as I was taught not to take pills until you absolutely have to. Oh, don't take pills because if you take them, then when you really need them, they won't work. Did any of you grow up with that message? So that's why I'm very slow to take antihistamines or anything else like that. But I literally was choking myself to almost, I would think almost to hernia stage. I was choking so much. I was, yeah, really in a bad way. And I went, I've got to do something to stop this choking. And I must admit that when I took the antihistamines, it all but cut it out completely. Phew. Now, I'd like to think as well, if we can, what what are you avoiding, all right, because you're a little scared, all right? Because there's another situation where I'm avoiding doing X, Y, and Z because, and fill in the reason. Um, and if you really look at it, it's normally because you have an underlying fear of some sort. Your inner child is scared. Well, if I go and, for example, I'm overdue for a mammogram. I got lots of reasons for it, like I didn't want to get near a hospital in the middle of a pandemic and da 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 da, all those sort of things. But it's way overdue now. Way overdue. Ah, um, you remember Kimmy had a pacemaker put in? She said she kept that news about her pacemaker away from people. And they got mad when they found out that she'd had that done. Yes, I want you all to know that because it is important that people know um, that you are sick because they can then support you. If you don't tell them, how can they support you? All right. And that is the issue. Now, one of the things I found, you remember what I said about being on the hamster wheel? One of the things I found is if you understand that going, all know what that feels like. You feel scared, you feel judged, you feel concerned, overly concerned about things. One of the things that I found is really important is to know that, okay, I just triggered my inner child and she's having a bit of a panic. And I always believe that my inner child really is there to protect me. And so one of the things I do is to, first of all, acknowledge that I've been triggered. Very important. And then I work pretty hard at trying to find out, do I know why? All right. Now let's have a little chat about me and the mammogram. Um, if I look at that with my adult brain, all right, like Lauren's mum, I've got good reasons for putting it off, right? Would you agree? I didn't want to get near a hospital. It wasn't I had to have a mammogram done. It was just I was due to have one done. I have it done every couple of years. And so the interesting thing is, can you all see that if I continue to put it off, I could be putting myself at risk? Right. And Kimmy is saying in her case, it all happened so fast, she didn't have time to tell them. Kimmy, I'm going to hit you with a 2x4. Is that okay? I always like permission before I do it. Thanks, Kimmy. All right, so Kimmy is saying this. Kimmy, I just want to ask, is that really the truth? And the reason I say that is you had enough time to tell us. And I would say that we probably are not as close to you, although we thank you for that honor, um, as some other people. So, did you tell the important people to you? And thank you for including us in that. You know, when you really look at it and get rid of the excuse of it, did you tell the people really close to you, the people who needed to know? And as I said, thank you for including us. Because I think that, yeah, the answer is yes, of course you did. So there were people that were along the line that you didn't tell. So here's the thing. Um, could you have told them after it was done? Oh, she's all right. So Kimmy's saying that she told us the same time as she told them. Well, you told me before you had the pacemaker put in. So why were they mad at you? That they didn't know you were struggling before that? Okay. So interesting. And now I have to ask you, Kimmy, here you are sick. Here you are, with all the fears around having a pacemaker put in, and now people are angry at you. How did that feel? Is that sort of like a double whammy almost? So let me ask you, Kimmy, because if we turn the mirror, it's always interesting. What would you have liked those people to say to you as opposed to being mad at you? All right, and still stay in truth. Could they have worded it better? And if there is a way that they could have worded it better, let us know so we know how to help when we're dealing with that situation. Um, so here's the thing that I found out, that when I get triggered, I know I need to acknowledge what's happened, and then I know I need to heal my inner child. Does that make sense? Because she's starting to panic and trying to protect me at some level. And so the main thing is to, from my experience, is to actually make sure that the inner child gets heard. 9 times out of 10, that inner child gets triggered because she is in fear. And she's in fear based on something that's happened to you in your past. Ah, just hold on a second on my story, because Kimmy's now giving us the information. She said, I didn't tell my sister because she always says she has the same thing. And at that time, I didn't need to hear that. Boy, do I relate to that. All right. And we've all had that happen, Kimmy, where we're telling somebody that we're sick and then they turn it around and make it about them. Right. I, I, I've done it. Anybody else here done it? Because if so, own it. Really important to own it. Um, but it's like, yeah. And when you're sick, you don't necessarily need to hear that. Um, Jody, you have chosen not to necessarily talk all about your illnesses, and that's your right. But can I know why? It's interesting. Kimmy's saying that her sister is now mad at her because she didn't share it all. Yeah. Did you tell her the truth? Did you tell her why you didn't share it? Okay. So you might want to consider that. Now, it won't make her happier. It'll make her more mad. But, she deserves to know why you didn't share it. All right. It wasn't that you didn't care about her. It is because your experience is when you tell her something like that, she minimizes it and turns it around to something to do with her. Now, do you understand what I mean about minimizing it? Right? She makes it less important than it is. How many other ways do we minimize? How do we do that? We do it to other people all the time. How many times do I say, "Well, I'm not feeling too good or whatever, but I'm glad I'm not in Ukraine." All right. for me, comparing it to something else actually helps me stay in reality. But for some people, they feel that if somebody says that to them, they feel minimized by it. And what I want you to see is it depends on your mindset, right? If you're in reality, is it true that I would rather have my cough and my choking than to be being bombed on in Ukraine? That is a fact for me. Jody's saying, I don't want to change how my family and friends think of me and how they treat me. So here's the question, Jody. Would it be fair to say then that you have only told those people who you think can manage that truth, in your judgment? Yeah. And Kimmy is just reconfirming that her sister then makes it, she says, actually, she says that she has the same illness and then makes it about herself. Yep. And a lot of people do that. A lot of people do that. So I know that when I'm triggered for something, the most important thing for me to do is talk to safe people. What are safe people? People who are safe people are people you know have your genuine best interests at heart. All right? Genuinely have your best interests at heart. When um, when somebody trusts me with that sort of truth, do you know the number one thing I do, Jody? I don't know if you are aware of that, but the number one thing I do is not to go there. In other words, I know if somebody shares that sort of information from me, I don't need to panic on their behalf. All right? That's not going to help them at all. So what I do is I ask myself, how can I be a friend now? More so. And the best way I can be a friend is not to overreact to the information. And Jody's saying, yes, when she got sick, I have only told a few people, the ones I'm closest to. Right. And that is really important. Uh, and, the other thing is, from my experience, I tell people because I know they will support me in that. They won't sort of minimize it. And they will help find options for me, all right? Which is, what I've always said is people don't want you to fix things. The one thing most people need to get better or to help themselves is options. All right, Jody, remember when you couldn't walk? I went away because you know me. I need to find some way to help you with this. And I went and did all those tests about what happens if I do arm rolls. Does it push up my heart rate? In other words, is it exercise? Does it pump blood into my heart? And the answer was yes. Absolutely amazing. So what I know is, you can sit down and do all sorts of exercises and be strengthening your heart. All right. And Jody went from doing absolutely nothing to actually being able to do 1,000 a day. You were doing, Jody, of arm rolls and helping to increase, your heart rate and doing things like that. And then you started doing stepping type things until you built up the muscles in your legs. And now, as sick as you have been, right, you are able to go outside and walk with a walker. I think that is somebody who dealt with the reality. But also know that if you hadn't told me the truth, I wouldn't have been able to start thinking about possible solutions. And Jody's saying the arm roll thing was life-changing. Sal, thank you. It's a pleasure. The interesting thing to me was that your doctors were amazed that you were doing it and that it definitely was helping. You would have thought that doctors would have given you calisthenics or something, but that's me being judgmental. That's me having a little snit now. Why didn't the doctors tell you that? Maybe they don't know. All right. And, when I say maybe they don't know, I know that my doctor for the longest time poo-pooed my Fitbit. And, he'd say, well, I need to send you for an oxygen thing, to find out what the oxygen's like in your blood. And I said, I actually can tell you. It's just, or whatever it is, it's funny. No, you can't. The watch can't tell you that. Well, I did a test to see what my watch said and then to see what the eventual result was. Guess what? There wasn't a difference. It was the same. So here's the thing. When you get triggered, what do you know you need to do? Acknowledge it. Make sure you know where the trigger was. And if you don't know where the trigger was, talk to somebody who's got the skill to help you find where the trigger was. Now, that could be a really good friend that's good at debriefing, or you might need to go to a doctor or, maybe a professional to find out, why is this triggering me? And really important for you to know that once you've got that fixed, when I say fixed, all right, really important that you do that, that you talk it out until you find out what caused that trigger. And it's amazing. It can be a look. It can be an expression somebody used. It can be a voice tone. It can be so many small things. But any of you who've been through trauma and maybe PTSD in some ways, the smallest thing can trigger it. And nobody else will think that is valid because they've never had that problem. All right. They haven't had that experience. So I know if I'm triggered by my inner child is struggling with loss, I will talk to people who've done well, survived loss, serious loss. All right. And why? Because I know they know what I'm talking about. And Jody's saying you can teach the doctors a thing or two for sure. Well, I want to tell you the funniest thing was about a year later, because he kept saying, "How's your weight?" And I said, "Oh, I've got it all recorded." And I show him on my phone what the watch has been telling me, and where I've got it all recorded. So the funny thing was, about a year later, guess who's now wearing a health? I think it actually is a Fitbit. It's just like, yeah, it took you a while, buddy. So here's the thing: by honoring your inner child, right? Honor your inner child by losing yourself in simple pleasures. So you want to recover from the hamster wheel. One of the most important things you can do is to find out what's causing it. And then once you got that solid, that means you're back in reality. I can see what happened. Now I need to get rid of that feeling. All right. And if it's a feeling, it's within us, it's within our control. How do you do it? Honor the inner child by losing yourself in simple pleasures. When Lauren found out that her mother, was ill enough that she needed to be in hospital, and she luckily came and talked to Jody and myself, and she started to blame herself for not realizing it. We settled that one in a heartbeat and going, you're not clairvoyant, nor are you a doctor. And your mom wasn't telling you the truth, like, hello. But the thing is, she's now in the right place. All right. And she's being treated for what is wrong, and she will recover pretty quickly. Now, what are you going to do? And immediately, Lauren's pretty good. She's been a viewer for quite a while, so she knows what to do. She knows that she needs to detract her mind away from thinking about it all the time. And, luckily she's a very creative person, and she knows what to do. And I would say, if you are trying to calm yourself down and get back into reality, doing something creative is really good, because it's the other brain. It's your right brain. This one, it's your left brain does all that thinking, but your right brain is that creative side that will help balance it out. So lose yourself in simple pleasures. And I think a lot of you know that for me, it is playing with my plants, my seedlings. And by the way, how many of you remember that I oh, Where is it? Oh. How many of you remember that I like growing things from the kite? This is the bottom of, this is the second one. This is the bottom of a romaine lettuce that I have, and you can see it's starting to grow again. All right, see this bit here, right here, and there's another one growing right here, two different ones. Some of you know that I get a lot of joy out of growing things. All right, that gets me away from my thinking mode and into my nurturing mode, and it works really well. And the really interesting thing to me was that I have now regrown the roots. I have grown roots. Neither of these have grown roots yet. When those roots come through the bottom and start looking strong, I then take them outside to weather a bit, and then if they survive that, then I plant them. I have one celery plant that's now this big in the garden. I have another celery plant that is now being weathered, if you like, out on the deck. You know, it's not getting nurtured every day. You know, I don't talk to it every day the way I do to these, right? So for me, I know that my inner child is happy playing in dirt. Right? I used to do pottery, and I love pottery because, I mean, how dirty do you get doing pottery, right? And another quote says here, unleash your inner child and be a little wild. You see, if the inner child gets triggered, then play inner little girl games. You know, when I say play little girl games, but go play, do something that you find joyful. Now, talking about lying about our feelings, all right? We've been discussing the impending inflation and possible recession for 2 years. Is that fair? As soon as that pandemic hit, I did the research on with friends of mine and also online to find out when the pandemic of 1918 happened. I think it was 1918, the Spanish flu. When that happened, what happened after it? And I knew what was going to happen. But think about that, all right? Think about that. I've been talking about it for 2 years. And I am pretty certain that for those of you who listened 2 years ago, you are busy watching the price of gas go up and say to yourself, well, yeah, we knew that was coming. We've been talking about that for 2 years. But you know, it's been made worse because of the war in Ukraine, right? And the situation with Russia. So you can say, all right, my belief is those of you that can deal with reality are not surprised the price of gas is going up because we've been talking about it, that everything will go up, right, following a pandemic. But the fact that we've got the war in Ukraine, and that is the wheat crop is not going to get planted, and the two top countries for wheat have always been Ukraine and Russia. So and that's why the Russians want to, or Mr. Putin wants to get Odessa. Why? Because that is the last bit of sea. That's where Ukraine exports all its wheat. So if it can capture Odessa, it will cripple the Ukraine. It won't be able to export its wheat. Well, the truth is, I'm pretty certain Ukraine is not planting wheat. Why? All the people who would be normally planting wheat are out fighting this war. So we know there's going to be a critical shortage, and I've been talking about that ever since that war started, of wheat and of sunflower oil. Why? Because Ukraine is the major producer of sunflowers for sunflower oil. So when I look at that, if I concentrate on that, I can choose to actually be adult about it and say, okay, I know that's happening. So therefore, let me stock up on oil. if that's what I need. If I use sunflower oil, let me stock up on that. Or the other side of it is, I know that wheat is going to get more and more expensive, and possibly um, maybe I should give up wheat, which is a good thing for your diet. But on the other hand, you think about it, I stockpiled wheat, right? So that at least I would not be totally out of it. And I'm trying to learn not to eat as much of it, or to eat it in different ways, all right? So I would like to suggest, how many of you, I believe our gas prices now are, double. Um, Double what it feels like. Well, and of course it's double it used to be. But it's the highest I've known it here. I don't know how the gas price is where you are, but right now it is the highest that I've ever known it. And I drive a V8. And so will I get judged by people for driving a V8? But here's the truth of it. I drive my V8 so little that if I went to try and start it right now, the battery would be dead, and which means I need to, charge it up this afternoon. All right. So I fill up my car maybe once every 2 months, if that. No. And most of the driving I do today is to charge up the battery. So now I've stopped doing that, and I now just put it on a trickle charge. So you think about that. Now then, we know that this is an issue, right? And Jody's saying the highest prices I can remember here too. Benji's talking about the price of beef went up. Remember, we talked about that. We talked about the fact that because of what's happening in Ukraine as well, Ukraine also was a major producer of animal feed, of what do you call it? Nutrition. Fertilizer. That's what I need. All right. So Ukraine, major producer of fertilizer. So if we know that that is not happening, what do we know? Farmers will not be able to feed their crops. At the same time, you've got droughts going on around the world. So we know, and we've talked about that time and time again, that world hunger is going to just absolutely go out of control. And if you've been hearing me, you will be expecting it, not surprised by it. You will say, as you start listening to that sort of information, you go, yep, we've been talking about that for 2 years now. All right. And for 2 years, I've been hearing it from Sal all the time. And now this has become reality. And I would like to suggest that those of you who have been listening will not be triggered into wanting to blame somebody. This is like, it's inevitable. It would have been inevitable if the war hadn't happened, but the fact that the war happened as well, that's going to drive the price of things absolutely ridiculous. Do we all know about the baby formula thing I was saying earlier, right? The reason it happened is not because people are price gouging or whatever. It's happening because like a perfect storm. Number one, there was a shortage happening because of the supply chain. And two, a whole lot of what was there had to be taken off the shelves because of the problem at the Abbott laboratories. Okay. All right, Kimmy's saying, I am not surprised. My grandparents told me when I was younger. Yes. And that's why every Friday we've been doing, how do you make your food last longer? All right. So you don't need to buy as much. Why? Because the price of meat is going to continue to get expensive. Why? Because the things that are meat eat food like wheat and so forth. And those things are not happening. So if the farmers can't get food for their stock, they will cull that stock, right? They will have to reduce the size of their herds down to what they can feed. And by the way, there is less food for them to eat. They have to do that. So there was a time when meat would have become cheaper because they're culling stocks. But now it's going to get very, very expensive, and there's not going to be a lot of it. That's why it becomes expensive. That's called the supply and demand, right? So have you noticed that when you get triggered, it is your inner child that wants to blame somebody, or it's your inner child that says it's not fair? You see, your rational brain, if you get go of the emotion, which is it's not fair, your rational side is going to say, no, nothing's fair when you're talking about a world crisis, right? They're not picking on you. Nothing is fair when you're dealing with a world crisis. And you think if you've got it bad, think about what is going to happen in places like India or Africa, third world countries, where it's going to affect them even more. Kimmy's mentioning they're even having, and she's in Wyoming, I believe, they're having an egg shortage because there's a bird flu going around. Absolutely. And have any of you got eggs freezer banked in your freezer? Remember, I have cracked a whole lot of eggs and frozen them. Not enough, mind you, but have frozen them. So in the case of an egg shortage, at least I have got some frozen. And they are, and I did the test. I took some of the frozen ones and thawed them and then cooked with them, and they were absolutely fine. I'm going to do another test, which is to thaw a couple and then see what happens when I fry them up. All right, what happens if I fry them? So I will do that. Maybe I'll do that on a broadcast. So if you are blaming other people, like, well, they're just price gouging, let me talk about that. The price of oil at the moment actually is going down, but the price of gas is still going up. Interesting thing. And a lot of people are saying, well, that's price gouging. I think to some degree, the oil companies will need to recoup what they have lost. All right. All right. So Kimmy's saying, all right, if you want powdered eggs, in the States, it's 102. Is it really 102 for a can of powdered eggs? For a pound, 1 pound. Jody, is that the same in Maine? Powdered eggs, a 1 pound can. How much? Let's see what it is in Maine. Interesting point, Kimmy. I have some powdered eggs, and do you know what to do for an egg substitute? I'll talk about that this evening. How about that? Because that's a food thing. So, do you understand what I'm saying? If your inner child has been triggered, it is a really good thing to entertain your inner child, all right? And do things that are things that your child used to enjoy. you know, um, and maybe it's painting something, maybe it's being crafty, maybe it's going out and playing in the dirt. All right? Very, very important. Well, good for you, Kimmy. Thank you for doing that. Now, is there a good side? All right. Is there a good side to the wheat crisis? Well, I started, because I like to play devil's advocate. Jody's found 2 pounds of powdered eggs, Kimmy, on Amazon for $45. So that's worth thinking about, right? So can any of you see an upside to the wheat shortage that's coming? I thought about it, and one of the things I'm going, wait a minute, but isn't Canada capable of being a major wheat producer? But we stopped a lot of the wheat growth because of the stuff that's coming out of the Ukraine and so forth. So now, is there an opportunity, looking on the bright side, how many of you feel that there is an opportunity for certain countries to now become wheat producers while this is happening? All right. And the answer is yes. I am pretty certain that whatever the controls were about not having the farmers plant too much, excuse me, not drinking enough, having the farmers not plant too much wheat. I think it'll be obvious that Canadian farmers will now probably be encouraged to plant more wheat to make sure that we can do that. However, we can do it because we can control water fairly well. All right, we've got quite a bit of water, but can the US do it where there's a water shortage? Now, even though we have plenty of, excuse me, people, even though we have plenty of water, do we still have water restriction? Yep. I'm pretty certain that torrential storm that we had last night for some hours will have helped the dams a little bit. So when you look at it, there will be upsides to this. I am pretty certain. Was there an upside to us all being in lockdown? Yes. Sports equipment, home sports exercise equipment went up. Why? Because we were in lockdown and unable to go outside and walk. So therefore we made plans on how to exercise our bodies. And for a lot of us, we bought a home gym, or we bought whatever was, we could find that was going to help us keep our bodies fit. All right. Kimmy's saying she bought some eggs when they had some eggs, and we paid $7 for a dozen when my daughter paid $2.99 for 18 eggs. Yes, very good thing. If you can buy a flat of eggs, do it. All right. And if you've got enough room in your freezer, put whatever you don't need into the freezer for when you do need them. Good point. So when you look at it, there were some upsides for some businesses during the pandemic. I am pretty certain, that you all would have loved to have had shares in Pfizer and Johnson & Johnson and everybody else, who are producing all the vaccines. Why? Because their stock prices would have gone up during that time. But now that, it's more of a maintenance thing, they will plateau. They won't necessarily keep rising so quickly. Are there any other things you can think of that you bought more of because of the pandemic? I know that I did almost total home delivery shopping. All right, because that meant that I maybe saw one or two people a week, and my chances of getting infected were less, even though I think I've already had it. So, there were things that changed, right? So home delivery became much more normal. And more companies who never had done home delivery had to start doing it. All right. So Kimmy's saying that she paid $7 for a dozen, but her daughter can get us some eggs where she lives, 36 eggs for $7. All right. So that is an incredible saving. And what if you actually go to the farm where the chickens are? All right, some local farmer who has fresh chickens, laying eggs. Can you get them even more cheaply and know that they are pretty good? And I say pretty good. Obviously, I would prefer them if they were free range, right? So those of you who live in rural areas, really good idea to find out where your local dairy is and see if you can get milk directly. You remember when we used to have milk delivered directly from the dairy? How many of you remember those days? Every morning you'd wake up to the clanking of milk bottles. I remember that. Will we go back to that? Maybe. Think about that. Now then, I want you to, yeah, Jody's saying, I remember those days, right? And we didn't just get milk delivered like that, right, Jody? Home delivery of dairy in general, because they would deliver milk and cheese and eggs, if I remember correctly. And cream, obviously, and sour cream, anything to do with dairy, you could have on a daily delivery. It was that fresh. All right. Have any of you bought milk? Remember I mentioned some time ago that milk would become a problem because they wouldn't be able to afford to feed the herds. How many of you are buying long shelf life milk? How many of you are learning to enjoy different sorts of milk? Now, I realize I have quite a bit of oat milk stored up, but then I thought, wait a minute, oats, I need to buy more oats as well, right? Because that's possibly going to be a problem as well. Um, so, you look at it and go, drinking oat milk, could I make my own? I know how to do it. Right? I've done those experiments. I know how to do it. So if I had to do it, I can do it and then take that and make smoothies and things. Yes, Jody's saying we've stocked up on several types of milk in Tetra packs. Jody, do you know the expiry date of those packs? I've also, thanks to something you said, Jody, I started to look at these sort of milks, and I just wanted to say that the expiry date on this, I need the glasses for that. Yeah, the expiry date on this bottle supposedly is July the 19th, 2022. But if I don't open it, all right, I'm pretty sure it can last longer. So buying it in bottles like this, sealed, and that it's long life, it's ultra filtered, that makes it, and they zap it, and this has 75% more protein and 25% less lactose. So it's healthier for you as well. I'm still working through my first batch of oat milk, almond milk. Actually, I bought almond milk, not oat milk. That's right. I bought almond milk, right? And this is due to expire in June, but I'm pretty certain it's going to last a lot longer. I've only used about half of it, and I've already got another dozen in, and that doesn't expire on the label here until May next year. So you understand, I've got cupboards with extra milk in Tetra packs. That's what Jody's talking about. All right, so Kimmy's saying, I got the last can of powdered milk, $20 for 2 pounds. All right, I buy my powdered milk in bags, and it is probably 26 Canadian for a 5-pound bag. It's pretty expensive, and it's going to get worse. All right, as the milk shortage starts to happen, it will get worse. And so be prepared, not scared, all right? So here's a nice quote about your inner child, all right? Life is meant to be fun. Hang out with your inner child and splash in some puddles now and then. How many of you know we are going to need to honor our inner child a lot more as things get more tough, if they do, right? Maybe it won't happen, all right? But what I'm saying to you is if things are getting tough, it's going to become more and more important to do things that you enjoy that don't cost a lot of money, and you learn to enjoy things more, all right? Know that you are the one that is responsible for your happiness, and you can be happy without a whole lot of money. Believe you me, I've lived in Africa. I've seen it. So hang out with that inner child of yours, because she's going to be the answer to a lot of things. And remember, this is a nice quote. It says, hold the hand of the child that lives inside you. For this child, nothing is impossible. Can you remember those days? Can you imagine getting up every morning and your only job all day, was to play and wait for the food to be delivered? How many of you I can't even remember those days, quite honestly. Not surprising when you think about it, but it was just like, but I know they were there. That was my whole thing. You got up, somebody fed you. That is wonderful. And then you went out to play until the next meal. You went out to play. So how many of you are making it a habit to get outside? We've been talking about that. Remember Charlotte's wonderful example. She has been going out for at least half an hour every day. I split mine up into sort of about 2 or 3 times a day I go out now. And the first one, I will do it in my dirty clothes so I can go and play in the garden and do, feed my compost bins and do things like that gets dirty. And then I will come in and get squeaky clean, and I will nearly always end up back in the garden again, going, why didn't I do this the first time? Right. Wow, interesting. Kimmy says, does anybody remember getting cheese, canned meat, box milk from the government? Yes, rationing, right? And Kimmy's also saying, I've been outside even if it's freezing here. Yes, I cannot tell you how much I love my covered deck. I've got a 29-foot covered deck, and I can go out there. I've got all my recycling stuff out there. So when I, got something that needs recycling, goes there, right? And all my paper and cardboard and everything else are on my deck now. So I make sure I go out to put that stuff into the recycling or to divide it up. And that really helps me get more fresh air. And by the way, while I'm out, I leave the door open so fresh air is getting into my house. I didn't expect to be doing that in May, but I had to put the heat back on again, people. It got so bad here. How about this? I love this. The wound is not my fault, but the healing is my responsibility. So think about that. The reason your child got triggered is not your fault. That was an external thing that you were unable to control, and it opened up memories subconsciously. But you can consciously be part of the healing. All right. And as I said, make sure you're talking to the right people, not people who are going to necessarily just give you sympathy, but people who can help you find out where that trigger was. Very important. All right. Talk to me about that, Kimmy. Kimmy is saying we're having a cardboard box shortage. Is anybody else having that problem? No. Finding other uses for my cardboard would be. I've noticed that, for example, Amazon is sending more and more parcels in bubble wrap packages rather than cardboard boxes. There was some incredible waste of cardboard, I thought. I'd order a small thing and it would come in a box 10 times its size on its own. And it was just like, what a waste. But obviously it was the smallest one they had that day. That's my reality. So do you agree that healing the inner child is our job as an adult? So I just need to know, as I said, for me, it's go play a little bit longer with the plants. By the way, I was horrified with that rain we had last night, and I thought, gosh, I wonder how my new seedlings are doing that I put out to to acclimatize to the weather. And I've even planted some, and I'm going, oh gosh, I hope they survived it. I will go and check later today after the broadcast, see how they did. Interesting. Kimmy's saying that now they're saying we used to throw the cardboard boxes away. Now they send them back, and they will not let you have them. I must agree that I recycle my cardboard boxes. We have a very good recycling program, so cardboard does get reused here. All right, we don't put it in the landfill. Right, we have a separate container that is for anything to do with cardboard, like cardboard boxes. Even when the wasteful. All right, so you get a box like this. You can even put this sort of a box in there, any sort of cardboard. All right, you just put it in, and it's a yellow bag that you put it in. Your toilet rolls can go in there. Your in a tube from your paper towels, if you're still using them, those sort of things can all go in there. So we recycle. And we've been doing that for a long time, though, Kimmy. I'm glad you're doing it now. How about this one? We grow older and bigger each day, but we can stay youthful by keeping our inner child ageless. So my question is, if you want to feel better, are you doing what your inner child loves to do? Or are you staying in your adult and saying, oh, well, the kitchen's not tidy enough yet, I'll go and do that later? Make playing an important part of your day, even if it's 15 minutes of playing. All right, veg out, go play in the dirt, paint, be creative, do something that the inner child enjoys, and your happiness and the way you feel will be elevated. All right, so Kimmy is saying that they should have done it a long time ago. Should is a blame word, and I understand how you feel, Kimmy. All right, and she's saying in her community they need a recycling building, right? So the main thing is, what if I tell you that a lot of the recycling gets shipped off to the Philippines to sit on some island? That's scary too. And are we addressing that? All right, so here's a nice quote for you. Listen to this one, everybody. When you have lost your joy, look for your inner child. Wake her from her long, scared slumber. Tell her it is safe to come out. And play now. You've got her in your loving arms, and no one can hurt her or leave her anymore. All right? Rise and shine. Address your inner child. All right? If you want more happiness in your life, play more. And as Walt Disney said, adults are only grown-up children anyway. And, sometimes we spend too much time being adults. I did something, here's something that I found interesting from the pandemic, etc. I did something yesterday that I haven't done for a long time. How many of you remember I was wearing a pink sweater last week? And what I found was that apparently I had been feeding a moth. There was a hole in it. And I nearly threw it out. And I went, wait a minute, I love this sweater. And in the old days, we didn't throw out sweaters that the moths had a little meal of. We mended them. And so last night I sat and mended a sweater. And what amazed me, hang on, I need to get it to show you. All right, so how many of you remember I was wearing this sweater? And by the way, look how much bigger it is now. It seems to have grown, or I've lost weight. But I had a hole in it about this big. And what I did was I mended it. The question is, can you see where it was? Hang on. Just want to make sure I got the right sleeve here. Yeah. All right. So can you see where it was? And the answer is, it's right there. But I remember being taught how to mend woolen sweaters. Now, this isn't woolen, this is acrylic. But the truth is, do you know how to mend things? Because it's going to be important that we don't keep buying things because we can't afford them. So learn how to fix things. Right, Jody. I was quite surprised. I had to look quite carefully to find out where it was because I did such a good job of it. And if you don't know, do any of you not know how to do that? And remember, this was a knitted item, right? And knitted items are really interesting. So you know that in a knitted item, there are like loops in a knitted item. And what had happened was the moths had eaten a little hole there, actually quite a big hole. It was probably about nearly an inch. No, half an inch. So here's what I did, and you've got to think about it. You've got, so probably, I would say it was about 2 rows that were affected. Okay. So what I did was and I want to show you because some people don't know how to do this. I took a thread of similar color and I connected this row loosely to this row down here. In other words, number 1, put in a couple of rows for stabilization, all right, and to keep the tension correct. And then what I did was I took my needle and I hooked it through here and then over here under there and then into there. And then I pulled it very slightly. And then here I put the needle in here and went under here over this one and under and then connected it. And then I just pulled it very slightly together. And then I went over again this way, weaving it, and there it is. Hang on, let me see if I can get it so you can see. Yeah, I think you can see. Is it there? There it is. But it was a hole this big. So think about that. And the funny thing was, the reason I'm talking about it was my inner child was absolutely delighted I had learned that, to be able to do that. I thank the nuns for teaching me. The inner child lives within all of us. It's part of us that feels emotion and is playful. It's the inner child, right? Just remember, it's your inner child that gets triggered, right? It's playful, intuitive, and creative, usually hidden under our grown-up personas. The inner child holds the key to intimacy in relationships, physical and emotional well-being, recovery from addictions, and the creativity and wisdom of our inner selves. All right? Our inner child causes us a lot of pain, but also is the answer to our pain. I found that really interesting. What about you? If you want to fix that hamster wheel, let go of the excuses, find out what got you there, and then make sure you spend time each day playing. And also, I really strongly believe I believe, acknowledge the inner child. I know that if I want to help somebody, there are two things I say. If they're upset, I will listen to what they have to say. And then what I will do is I will ask questions to try and get their anger to answer me. In other words, I will listen to it and say, now, what are you angry about? And don't worry about the words you use. All right? Why? I want them to vent. What is their anger about? Because in anger is the fear. In anger is your fear, right? Because remember what Dr. Jerry Jampolsky said, there are just two emotions, love and fear. And if you're not feeling in love with life or in love with this person, then you are at some level in fear of this life or in fear of this person. Does that make sense? And it's a fine line, isn't it, for those of you who've been through that? Loving your inner child helps you remember your innocence, all right? And recognize how much life loves you. Ask the child within, what can I do for you today? All right? And let's ask our inner child that question right now. What can I do for you today? And immediately I can see myself back out in the garden. So that's one thing. Um, and so it's interesting, isn't it? And I noticed that I have been trying to tidy up my craft room again. Um, and I used to be in my craft room every day. That's where I have my morning coffee. I now have my morning coffee in my living room. And I realize I may want to go back to having my morning coffee in my craft room. Why? Because I was always pottering around afterwards, playing with something, right? Designing something or doing whatever. So think about that. What can you do for your inner child today? Because knowing that your inner child wants to create. Think about it. What do children do when they play? They play make-believe, they play dress up, they play art. When you think about all these things, right? And I love, for example, Benji was here earlier, but, I love that Benji is teaching his children how to nurture a garden, how to feed themselves if ever they need to. And it may be a complete meal of tomatoes, but they know how to grow things. They know that things have to be watered every day. They understand nurturing plants. All right. So all those things are such important lessons. Instead of just having it delivered, let's learn how to grow stuff. How about this? I thought this was good. The cry we hear from deep within our hearts comes from the wounded child within. Healing this inner child's pain is the key to transforming anger, sadness, and fear. Now, for those of you who are regular watchers and know that I had this issue going on with my brother, yesterday was the day that if he had arrived in Canada, he would have contacted me. And as you know, I asked him not to come to Canada on this trip. And so can you imagine that part of me was, sort of waiting to exhale through the whole of the day? Would he contact me? Excuse me. Would he contact me? In other words, had he ignored my two warnings and my two requests of him? Because I know he ignored the first one, but would he ignore the second one? And the answer was apparently not, because I didn't hear from him. And how many of you know that my inner child is going, maybe he'll never talk to you again? Can any of you relate to that? And it was quite funny how my adult actually responded, which was, how much would that change your present day life? In other words, he doesn't talk to you much anyway. So how much is that a loss? And I had to laugh and go, yes, but he's still my brother. And so remember, I am only responsible for my behavior in this. So I will continue to acknowledge birthdays and Christmases and stuff like that. And, it's up to him what he does. I am only responsible for my side of this. Always bring out your inner child. Be young at heart, always. Life is beautiful. How many of you know that sometimes on a Friday evening you can see my inner child? My inner child likes Friday evening cooking because she gets to eat things. Bits of bacon. I hadn't realized it until quite recently that this baking, this cooking live on a Friday night actually does feed my inner child. And also, how many of you have watched her go like this? Probably subconsciously, I do things like this or like this, because I like the way it looks. It's creative. And for those of you who were watching last week, did we do mac and cheese last week? I was amazed how tasty that healthier version of mac and cheese was. That surprised me. Also, I am glad that that I froze it in 1 cup portions, because it was definitely go back for more. So very, very tasty. I think we did that last week. Anyway, it was really good. Wow, Kimmy's saying, I was just saying how I love chalk drawings outside on the cement. Yeah, that's awesome. What did we do last week, Jody? Oh, we did finger food. That's right. What did we do? I can't remember. Anyway, yes, when did you last take some chalks and draw on the cement? Tacos, the apple pie tacos, of course. Definitely a do-over. And the next thing I'm going to do, I'm waiting for more of those tart shells to arrive. I'm now going to take, let me show you. I was wondering, this is buttered chicken and vegetable, okay? I was wondering how many buttered chicken tartlets I could make from 1 can. How many of you would be interested to see? And it's already cooked. It's already done. I just need to portion it. So the new tacos will be coming, and the new tartlets will be coming. And I thought that would be really interesting to see this can. How many tarts would it make? And ideal, just, I was surprised that week how many times, what I did is I took the extra little tartlets that we made and I put them into food prepping boxes, a couple of tartlets and an apple pie. One of those apple pie tartlets, tacos. It was great. And so every day I had a couple of those. Sometimes I had a salad with them. Some days I had it cold. Some days I just warmed a couple up. Worked really well. And so I thought I need to do another batch, but this time I'm going to do them like this and see how many I can make. My biggest problem is all my freezers are full. I thought this was really cute. It says, "Hello, inner child. I'm your inner babysitter." All right. And that's what I'm learning to do now. When my inner child gets triggered, I think about, what does she need? She needs to be heard. She needs to get a voice around her fears, and she needs to be nurtured. Does that make sense? And then she can play again. Then she can play again. And I think when you can see that for what it is, for those of you who have illnesses going on, uh, I know from my own experience that sometimes the fear of what it might be is worse than the actual reality of what it is. I also know that awfulizing is part of reality, all right? You, I awfulized about what was going to happen to my blood sugar numbers last time. And I was quite shocked when they came in quite normally. I mean, that was just like, really? Apparently, I'm doing better than I think. But what was I thinking? I've lost weight. I must be eating better. Therefore, surely my blood sugar must be under control to a large extent. I'm not saying it's perfect, because it isn't, but it's definitely under control. And for those of you who've been watching my weight, I am about this far away from the next 5 pounds. Uh, and I've been a bit bad this week. I've been eating a little bit too much of certain things, but so I'm nearly a pound up, but I'm only a pound, about 8 ounces away from the next marker for me. I do my weight change in 5 pound markers, and I've already lost 11 pounds this year. I nearly 12. Nearly 12. I'm working on the 12th one. Caring for your inner child has powerful and surprisingly quick results. Do it, and the child heals. All right. I knew when I got triggered and I was going in the hamster wheel and I couldn't get off it, I was too upset. I knew that talking to the people that really cared about me was a major part of my recovery. The people who could delve in and find out what the child was scared of and talk me through that and know that I would still survive. That was the most important part of my healing, was to do that work. And it was not easy. I cried. I don't mind telling you, because it was horrible to think that, I might have pissed both my siblings off enough that neither of them would ever talk to me again. And it was just like, if I could face that reality, then I could get on with my life, because it's not just me, right? They have their part in it as well. And so, I found that really interesting. We have to listen to the child we once were, the child who exists still inside us. The child understands magic moments, and we stifle its cries, and we cannot silence its voice. The child we once were is still there. All right? So for those of you who get scared, it's okay to be scared. Acknowledge it. It's okay that I had that moment of fear. It's reality. It's a possibility, isn't it? For those of you who have been struggling with illnesses, it's okay to not be perfectly in control all of the time. It's okay to be frightened for a little while, but get out of that hamster wheel and enjoy every day you've got, for example, all right? And I look at it and go, what lies have I been telling myself about the mammogram thing? About the same lies I have about getting my car serviced. All right? It's time for my car to get serviced. It hasn't been serviced since the pandemic started. Right? There are certain big girl things I need to start doing again. Do any of you relate to that? How many of you know I'm not alone, right? There are certain things that we need to start doing again. And, let's be honest, if you're living in the Northern Hemisphere, autumn is coming. And what will come with autumn? another spike in the pandemic, probably. It'll come back to some degree. So make sure you do the grown-up things, if you like, during the summer, if you possibly can, because it's possible we'll go back into lockdown in the fall. If you could only see you, if you could step outside of yourself, you could really see you. You could see the child in you. You could see the infant in you. You could see the pain in you. And you could see the hope in you. You could see the potential in you. And you could believe in you. You would be in awe of the amazingly strong, courageous miracle of an individual that is you. You would love you. I hope you see you. Isn't that beautiful? Kimmy saying, I was frightened last weekend. We went up into the mountains and my daughter was driving on roads I am way too scared to drive on. Yeah. But now that you're safely home, was part of it fun? What was the scenery incredible? Think about that, because if you think about a child, quite often a child needs to be a little bit frightened to be able to take a bravery step, all right? How many of you can remember not wanting to jump into a swimming pool? Why would I want to do that? um, there's so many things that as a child we were frightened of and we needed encouragement to actually do it. So I think it's wonderful that your daughter took you on that trip. I can remember one time, Kimmy, being driven in the Alps in Europe. And I assure you, I was really scared. They were very small roads along some of those mountains. And it was scary. I can remember that in Africa even more so, where, some of those roads were so dangerous, it wasn't even funny. But I look back on it and going, I remember that, there were a lot about living in Europe that I don't remember, but I remember those roads. Hi, Beth. Good to see you. So embrace your inner child. Understand she is your early warning signal that something is not right, but also understand that if you're not entertaining her, you're not a happy person. Yes, Kimmy's saying about that trip. Sure, she was frightened. There were roads she'd never want to drive on. But hear her answer. She said, it was beautiful. I had a great time. Well done, Kimmy. I'm proud of you. Hi, Autumn. It's how are the twins? But most of all, how are you? I always ask about the twins for some reason before I ask about you. I apologize for that. And Andrea, how are the children? They must be teenagers by now. I just realized that how long you've been a viewer, Andrea, and I realized that your little children are not little children anymore, are they? Wow. That's scary to think about that. How old are the children now, Andrea? I remember you taking them to the beach for, isn't that funny? Tears in my eyes. Autumn is saying, I came because I needed some company. The twins are getting molars and it's been a really hard day. Oh, we love you. This too shall pass. Oh, you poor thing, Autumn. That's not fun, is it? All right. So would you all agree that inner child work is essential? It's the essence of our growth as a whole person, right? Do not ignore your inner child. Autumn's telling me that, oh, no, I lie. Andrea's telling me Vivian will be, no, Vivian will be 18 at the end of June, and Michael is 10, and little Lily is 4 in July. No. Little Lily's going to be 4? Oh, that is amazing. And Vivian was, wow. She was less than 10 when I first met you. It must have been about 10 years ago, right? Michael was, no, I think Michael was about 4. And time flies, doesn't it? You're right. Yeah. Autumn, it's not because I know, because I've been there and done that. That's what I seem to remember people telling me. But I think it's wonderful that you've come to distract your brain. That, to me, that is, and hopefully laugh a little bit with us. And I really love this quote. It says, "I'm happy to report that my inner child is still ageless. And I would like to remind you that my inner child is in there because you see her when she does, that as well. Body language, you see it, right? Um, yeah, Autumn saying, I've been through this teething thing before, but not with twins. Yeah. Oh, Andrea, all right. So, Jody, perhaps we could take a note of that. She's saying that the funeral of her grandfather will be the 23rd. So, circle of life, all right? I'm glad you get to have closure on the 23rd. And then, I think about it and going, any minute now, we're going to have Benji and Judy's new baby come to light, and circle of life, right? It's amazing how we have these passings and then new life in our world as well. I like this quote, and it says, after a while, the middle-aged person who lives in her head begins to talk to her soul, the kid. And I would like you all this week to ask yourself at least once a day, yeah, I know I need to be cleaning up in the kitchen, but what does my inner child want to do? And the same way in reverse, if you spend all your time doing childish things instead of doing grown-up things, you might want to say, yeah, I hear you, kid. I hear you. Yeah, I'd love to play this online game a little bit longer because it is fun, isn't it? Totally addictive. But, maybe we just tidy up the kitchen for 15 minutes beforehand. All right? So work it both ways. But never let age extinguish your inner child. How many of you believe that I will be doing experiments on, my kid loves experiments, right? You've seen it. So it's like, even though the potato tower didn't work, how many of you know I thoroughly enjoyed doing the experiment? It's a bit like life, isn't it? It's not about the end result. It's about the journey that's fun. Autumn, what a great idea. Autumn saying, lately I've been putting on music from when I was in high school for when I clean up in the kitchen. All right, so let us know, who do you listen to? All right. Who are you listening to? I know that Jody listens to Duran Duran. So, and I listen to Elvis and the Beatles, and I sing along. So great idea. I've started doing that, when I get on my, I've got an air glider thing that I do. I put on music from the 50s sometimes, which is when I was my first 10 years because there's some music in there that really activates my inner child. And Autumn saying, I also put on loud music when I tidy up the house. Yep. 2010 pop music. I'm playing from the 1950s. Think about that. And Andrea is saying, I listen to the wonderful 90s. All right. So it's a great idea. And by the way, the reason it's a great idea to play the music of your teens is you know all the words, right? You might not know the words of all the current songs, but you do from the years that you were in your teens. You know all the words, right? I don't think there are many Beatles songs that you could put on from the first part of their history that I don't know the words to, right? That's a great thing. And imagine if you were cooking and listening to those as well. Great thing to do. And that would be a great way to entertain your child every day. Now, do you automatically start dancing to it? And if so, what was your favorite dance step? Think about that, right? Which dance step made you feel like you were really an in person? Now, I can remember in my early teens, it was the twist. How many of you can remember doing the twist? Can I still do it? That would be a good thing to do, actually. Good exercise for my waist. Let's twist again, like we did last summer. Yep, I remember doing that. And then I remember, I was in the disco age as well, people. So I can remember this. Yeah, I can remember doing that. I was quite good at that. I could even do the... I could do myself serious injury here, but my kid is enjoying it. So I want you to remember that we have control. What if you make a certain part of your day, all right, your kid time? I like the idea. I want to tell you, I used to have some great moves, Jody. And when I look at it, I don't think you forget that, do you? The good old disco music. Yeah, Kimmy remembers that as well. I don't think you forget that. And by the way, it also dates you. Have you noticed that a lot of us get stuck in the dance moves that we were doing when we were in our teens? And we don't sort of graduate too far past that. I have no idea how to do... Do people still do dance moves? I guess they do. Yeah, I'm still trying to work out this thing that the kids do. Yeah. I actually, you won't be surprised to hear this, people. I was in a grocery store not so long ago, and there was a kid entertaining themselves with this, movement thing, whatever it is. And I stopped them and I said, could you slow that down a bit? And the kid looked at me and said, what? And I said, slow it down. I want to see how that's done. And then I was trying to do it with them, and you could see them rolling their eyes, and I didn't care. I didn't care. It was just like, I need to see if I can do that. And there were old people looking at me just going, and I didn't care at all. Autumn says, I'm only 27. I feel old when I talk to teenagers. I had to Google some of the slang terms they say. When you really feel old, though, Autumn, I've noticed this, is if you watch the Grammys and you haven't the foggiest idea who these people are. If you happen... I've stopped watching the Grammys because it makes me feel so old. It's just like, I never heard of those people. And how about this reminder? The way to get started is to quit talking about it and begin doing it. All right? Jody's saying But that's what keeps me young, Sal. I love that attitude. You all heard about me stopping a guy with a mohawk one day. It was so funny. I was downtown near the beach. Remember, those of you who remember me with the ice cream cone, I was downtown, walking near the beach, and this guy walked past me with a mohawk that was sort of like this high, and it was bright blue, and it was and green. It was like a peacock, and he passed me by with a girlfriend or something. So I could my little kid wanted to know how he did that. So I just turned around and I followed him, and I had to walk pretty quickly because I needed to get ahead of him. And then I put my hand out and said, "Stop." And you could see him going, "What's going on?" I said, "I'm really sorry to keep you, but could you tell me, what do you do to your hair to keep it up like that?" I think it's awesome. And, his face changed from, "What the is this person up to no problem." Egg white and a lot of spray was the answer. Starts off with egg whites, and egg white, as when it hardens is pretty brittle. And then, he, just to make sure, he puts hairspray on as well. And of course, being me, I asked, how long does it take? Now, how long did it take to get that looking like that? Not very long, about 5 minutes. Get it right. So I thanked him so much. I want to tell you, I do a lot of that. There was one day I had my new phone one day, and I'm literally walking out, and I'm trying to get it to copy. I know it must be possible for it to copy, and I couldn't work out how to do it. So I just literally stopped the first person I saw that looked like they were in their late teens, so I wouldn't be accused of, harassing a child. And I said, "I'm really sorry. Have you got a second to show me how to copy on a cell phone?" And he said, "What?" I said, "I know it must be possible to copy and paste on a cell phone. I just don't know how to do it." And they burst out laughing, and they started to do it. And I said, "No, no, no, no. Slowly." I'm an old fart. I got white hair. And, he literally showed me how to do it. And I said, I knew it couldn't be that difficult. Young people are doing it all the time. So I just, like everything else in life, everything's easy once you know how to do it. So how do you get out of a trigger situation of your inner child? You play. First of all, you debrief. Very important, because you need it out of your head. And, you need to regurgitate all that stuff, get it out of you, and then talk it through with somebody so you can get to the reality. And then heal the inner child. And every day I encourage you to say, what am I going to do to entertain my kid today? And if you do just 15 minutes a day of entertaining your kid, you're going to be a happy person for the rest of the day. I don't know why that is. Jody, I have a very difficult question to ask you. May I? And the thing I need to ask you is, I realize I didn't support you in it, and I want to apologize. Okay, Jody, how are the masks doing? Are they cut out? I just realized right now that I never did ask about them all week. I am so sorry. Bye, Autumn. Enjoy the babies. It's a pleasure for the distraction. Come back again. All right, so I just want to check, because I said I would, and I realized I didn't. So what a bad friend I am. Right. But I haven't totally forgotten, because now I remembered. Doom, 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 doom. Want to know. How many of you remember that conversation with Jody? Not cut out. My paperwork has just been completed. All right, so that was it, right? Jody needed to complete the insurance paperwork before she did the masks. Well done. And she's saying, you're a wonderful friend. And suddenly, for a moment, did you feel me minimize my value? I'm going, I never did ask about the masks. All right, everybody. I hope the reminder about your inner child was of value to you today. I think we all needed to revisit that. I'm feeling very proud of my ability. By the way, I also got out onto my back bank. I've got a very high back bank behind me here. And I went out and I mowed that. It's getting more dangerous for me. And so what I've started to think about is what can I grow on that bank so I don't have to go up there and mow? And I'm thinking about having a bank of cactus and spreading things. All right. So what I'm going to be doing is planting it up over the next couple of years. I've got a lot of cactus plants growing in an area, and I'm going to start planting them so they can spread. And then I'm also going to start buying creepers. When I do my next visit to the uh, nursery, I'm going to pick up some small plants that I can plant in the autumn and that they can weather. The reason I know that the cactus is okay to put on that bank, I planted them in another part of the garden last year and they're really healthy and multiplying. So I know if I plant a couple, they will spread. And hopefully I can slowly but surely turn that into a rock garden rather than just thing that grows moss and crabgrass. Means I'm going to have to start digging through the crabgrass, but if I do it slowly, I think it's doable. So I'm starting it already. I've got the first cactus planted there already. Succulent, not really cactus, not with the spines, more succulents. All right. So this is Dear Mama Sal saying thank you for being here. Remember to play with your little kid. She's always going to be with you. And she gets scared, so entertain her. She's also the bit of you that makes you very, very happy. Enjoy the music while you can. Bye bye for now. Thanks, Jody.